and then
Move this nonsense over to see what's what. Welcome to the chat room. And
let's see.
Now, am I not looking at my screen?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're live, but on your you need to change your worlds overrun on the left to live scene or intermission or something like that. Down, down, down. Down, down, down.
Oh, live scene. Okay.
Yeah. So you can click that, or you can go to intermission or stream, whatever it was.
So what is this nonsense?
Oh, is this something you bought?
I think that we were setting this up originally.
Okay. Well, if you want to start this over,
end stream.
No, you don't have to. You see where it says Worlds Overrun, and there's a drop down.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and click that, and just manage all, and then add new, create new, and call you can call it whatever you want, Eric streaming or whatever.
Yeah.
And done.
Done.
All right. So sources plus to your right.
Beep. Sources plus.
Was it display capture?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And double clicking. And yep. And then you can choose which display you want to capture.
This one's fine. This is the right one. That's my primary.
Right,
oh my god, Cascade.
And then you just move it over to the side and you're good.
Peachy.
Undo.
What's it? Undo?
Yeah, and you moved it over. There you go. Yeah, so you can just minimize this.
All right.
And then you're good.
Woohoo! All right. So I know that I know we just started and there's no one watching, but I'm gonna. Are we recording? Test widget.
Mm-hmm.
Record. All right. Now we'll record because might as well start someplace. So just so you guys know, Spicer's with me right now. This is his model, and I'm prepping it for cut up, and I gotta fix a couple of things because apparently this file's location is all janky, so I gotta zero out some stuff. You guys can barely see it if you can see it at all, but the floor plane has got two axes. You've got one for the object and one for the floor plane, so I just need to zero that stuff out. Which is the grid size. I'd like the grid size to be 10, and I like the 10. And the elevation set to 0 instead of -1. That makes everything better. Actually, we'll make this grid size 1 millimeter. Or is that 1 centimeter? I think it's 1 millimeter. No, it's too big. That's going to be 1 centimeter. That's fine. That makes me feel better, and then I'll turn it off. Yay. And then save. I've been working on this file for a while, and Spicer's like, why isn't it done yet?
Yeah. I don't care what's going on in your life. I want this done.
I'm sorry you've got an impacted colon, but the model needs... What's that?
I've had managers like that before. Those are the most horrible people to work with and for.
I had somebody so horrible that was like that. I had gotten halfway through the job before I realized that they were entirely too much trouble to work with, and I said, "You're impossible. Turn the files over," and walked away. I didn't even collect a paycheck. I just basically called them out on their lack of professionalism and was done with them. So, since I want to start a conversation and talk shop a little bit, well, I've got Spicer here because this is his model, and there's some fun stuff going on here. I'm just gonna talk to you about this, but I'm gonna cut this cape off right in this way, and I'm trying to make it so that you plug in the two males and then swing it gently over to plug into the male facing the alternate direction. so that this
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't create what I refer to as a lock. So I might taper this male key down just a little bit, because all I'm looking for is alignment, and that's one of the things that, although a lot of people probably would argue with me about this, when I started learning keying, keys are not structural; they're for alignment primarily. When I say structural, I'm talking like adding a bolt or a pin or some sort of attachment ligament that adds structural strength. Most statues, most models of this type, your structural element is going to be the in this case the cape itself, and you're asking the glue or the binder to do all of the work, and the keys are almost exclusively for alignment. But do you see, if I roll this over, you see how these guys are kind of vaguely in alignment, so they'll kind of like
Mm-hmm.
slide in, and then if you imagine this swing like a door hinge, it'll drop onto this one over
Yeah.
here. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I'm looking at this right now. And I'm trying to, so those of you that might be checking this out in the future, I'll this is only for the cape, but I'm trying to see where this is going. I don't mind that it's penetrating my cut plane here. Don't want it to cut into. I don't want it to cut too close, and I also don't want to create a part that sticks out too far. So I'm trying to make these guys work together. And what I'm going to do is when I go through the
Quick
cutting.
question. Um, is that key one-sided or is
So
it 3D match?
these are IMM tools. I actually, let me load this up so you guys can see this. I don't want to get into too much of this because this is part of my course over at XMD Academy, in case anybody's checking this out. So this is it should be in my Worlds Overrun folder, which I don't seem to be. I'm in the wrong folder altogether. Let's
Oh,
go.
it's 4 down
I'm brain
from what.
damaged. It's easier to go this way. So here's the tool. This is my version 4. I'm always tweaking this thing, but
Mhm.
this is the brush. So, and the reason that this is an IMM is because they're going to be they're completely size dependent, depending on the size of the object and what you're using. There are some tools that I use that are need to be specific scales, and those are what I call their build kits. And they're actual files that you open up and you copy and paste things from those files. But these can be IMM tools because it makes it a little easier to work with, and they're made of 3 parts. There's the plane itself. There's the pink one in this case is the female. That's going to be a cutaway. That has to be hard edged. And then there's the male, and the male has got draft angles on it, which are surprisingly important and almost always overlooked. And the also, if I turn the part back on and do this, you can see that the top of the key does not touch. I'll make this a little bit more apparent. Make that like that. The top of the key does not touch the back of the female key. And the
Mhm.
reason for that is that you don't want it to touch. You only want these side planes to touch, and you don't want to bind in the corners, which can happen if you have what's referred to as overbake, which is a process that happens in SLA printing, where the print can swell because of too much light.
Mhm. Right.
Um, so right now I'm just going through and I'm setting up these different. Let me see if I can go back to my thing. I'm setting up these different planes so that I can cut into Spicer's Thor model and get it so that this part will rest into those keys, and with a little bit of glue or binder, um, it'll just drop onto the part. There isn't a good way to make, if we were to turn on all the layers, which I I'll try to do, because I think it can turn it all back off quickly enough. If you look at all the layers, unless we were to put a key into the cape that supported it from the ground plane, which isn't visible at the moment, there really isn't a good way to make these guys lock into place without a binder, without a glue. But the truth is that
Right.
these kinds of models they're built to be glued together. If we were doing this for Sideshow, they might reproduce this whole thing and then glue it together, finish it, and then paint it, so the cape would be attached when you got it as a final product. But they're turning over final products, so this is a
Mhm.
different animal, though.
Right. Yeah, because I got a resin kit in from uh, uh, Creepy Tables, Maria Pamfilova's, the chick riding on the bear.
Oh yeah, oh that's a great piece. That bear
Yeah,
is
yeah,
overly is surprisingly simple for how
yeah,
good it looks.
yeah.
So
But yeah, it came in a bunch of pieces, and I was like, "Oh, fuck, I thought this was gonna be at least put together." Yeah, I was like, "Well, I have it," and then whenever like, I definitely want it they're coming out with the 1/10. I got the 1/6,
ooh,
but if they're coming out with a 1/10, then I'm gonna get that, and I'll send that to go get, like, put together and painted and then shipped back to me.
I gotta tell you, I have my own spray booth here in my home shop, and I love getting unpainted models, but there are a few model kits. There are a few models that are out there that I would kill to have them painted professionally. And I know a few professional painters. I know one of the guys that does primary paint jobs for Sideshow.
Oh, Matt?
No, Danny.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
um, he and I talk. We haven't talked in a while, but he's always working on something. And then Rick Cantu, Uncle Rick will, he'll, if I give him a call, he could paint something for me. But you're kind of paying a price for that stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good job, It's
yeah,
a lot of work.
yeah. Uncle Rick has painted, people like Simon Lee. He's painted for Collapse Industries. He's painted for endless numbers of people. I should ask him though if he's painted for. There's a sculptor who paints his own stuff. No, I don't think Rick is painted for who I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Jordu Shell. I don't think Rick is
Mm.
painted for Jordu Shell. Rick is primarily a painter, but he's kind of considered one of the better ones out there. And I love his work. I've been watching his work, and I'm lucky enough to have gotten to know him a few years back. But I've been watching his work for almost 10 years now. Um,
Yeah.
and he's kind of like, this is not a bad thing, but in some respects, he's kind of like a professional hobbyist. You know what I mean? He's like, he could be
Mhm.
like a serious professional making serious money, but it's like, no, I'm just interested in painting. And I'm just sort of like, what?
Son of a bitch. All that money.
all that
God.
all that time and energy. Uh, so what I'm going to do is I may have to make a few adjustments here. Spicer and I talk about this a lot, and I'm just going to bring it up again in case anybody's watching.
Yeah,
But
man, you got like 5 million viewers.
no, God, no. If I had 5 million viewers, I better go put some pants on. No, I was going to say, uh, the thing about this piece for me is that, like most of the pieces that come to me for cut up, which I usually refer to as engineering, because you're engineering the part to print better, or cleaner, or smarter, or be moldable or castable. Um, we've had to make a whole bunch of small changes, mostly with the capes, which is what's fighting me the most. Uh, but I may ask Spicer if we can make some minor adjustments to some of the capes, because some of the cape portions, because there's a couple that if I could just nudge them over a little bit here or a little bit there, they'll work better. But I'm not. I'm not committed to that yet. I'm still trying to see if I can solve the problem without having to do that sort of stuff. But whenever
Mhm.
if you guys ever get to the point where you're engineering models and you're engineering them for somebody else, the worst thing you can do is um, alter the artist's vision. But there's a lot of times where you have to make minor edits to just make them functional. This one in particular, we had to thicken the cape quite a bit. We thickened it mostly on the inside, so we were able to maintain silhouette. But there were a few areas that we had to like close up and or thicken, so that they were printable, not even castable, but printable. If I were going to cast this, and I'm not really a casting person, but if I were going to do more than print it, there might be some things that we might have to do to the cape itself, this portion of the cape itself. But right now we're not worried about that. Right now we're just worried about finishing the model, finishing the model's cut up, and making the pieces work. So I'm going to go through this and separate these guys, group split.
So do you know who Scotty Young is?
Scotty Young.
Hmm. He does this type of art.
Hold on a second. I don't have you visible. I've got to go. I've got a different window
But
open.
yeah, he's the one that the Earthworm Jim I did, and I've done all the cartoony stuff that I've done.
Mhm.
It's pretty much based on his artwork.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, this whatchamacallit. Yeah, I want to do this one. This one looks really fun. And
Oh, okay. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah. We're looking at uh, we're looking at this guy here.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Scotty Young, he's dope. I love his artwork. It's like super simple, and it's all about the gesture, and
Yeah.
like everything's
You know
just
how
my.
we're, you know how I was talking about leading with something with your piece last
Mhm.
night. If I were to say, what this character's leading with, it's a hard point to figure out what he's leading with because of the like what's going on here. But I would say that he's possibly leading with the hip straight through this knee, because it's
Mhm.
kind of like when you think about what's leading. Usually, it's referred to in acting, and or in animation. It's kind of like if you can think of it like shooting an arrow, like right after you let go of the arrow, what's pulling the whole piece forward, what's driving the energy. And so we've got this energy coming up through here and into the hip and out through the knee. And it's kind of, I don't want to say that leading with something is perpendicular to the gestural, the strong gesture line, but it's more like you can lead with your chest, you can lead with your chin, you can lead with a hand, and it's almost like the follow through of energy, if
Right.
that makes any
Mhm.
sense at all. But
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
it's something that in sculpture, if you think about it and you try and implement it, it helps to really define the weight of a sculpture. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And a lot of people, they either don't see it or they don't understand it or they don't use it.
Oh yeah. We're gonna make this really.
Hey, Alex, Alex gave me a thumbs up on the live stream. I don't know if you guys know uh, Alex Frubel. I'm probably destroying his name because it's got the double dots over the zero. Um, but he's a cool dude. What's going on, Alex? Let me see here. All right, so where was I? All right, so I'm going to run this. I'm going to run this cut and then see how this looks with the body and try and figure out how this relates to what I was doing.
Word. I'm gonna start streaming too. I'm gonna go get ready.
Yep, yep. This is the thing that always gets people in trouble, is not double checking their cut planes. These cut planes need to be lined up just so. And what you can do is, if you grab a plane, yeah, see this one seems to have been nudged somewhere along the line. I might resituate that one. Just going back through and looking and double checking where everything is. Yeah, so this one must have gotten bumped somewhere. I'm just going to make this easy on myself. And drop the curve. So this isn't a common thing. A lot of times I will relay out a plane if I'm having this particular issue, but this should do the job because it's just off by a smidge. And as long as I'm catching the whole thing, it should be all right. Because again, it ain't rocket science. I'm just going to pull this up a little bit. That should fix it. We can always cut it too and then come back. Which is what I'm going to do. Because I'm lazy and I want to see what happens. And I need to push it through. Okay, it's already pushed through. I don't know how that got mangled. Happens, but not very often. Must have been bumped before I saved this. So I'm going to Boolean this part. I'm going to check it. I'm going to check it against the model. I'm going to see what the alignment looks like, see how it interacts with other areas. Go down here. We'll see what this looks like. Yeah, everything's looking good. Check the parts. We'll run auto groups. We want to check the cape first. See how that's looking. It looks like I've got some floaters. That's not the end of the world. We'll just invert and delete those. Delete hidden. Floaters happen when you they happen for a lot of reasons, but in this case it's because I used inflate through here, and I've got some debris floating around. Now this is going to get attached to the body. What I'm going to do is, to make everybody's life easier when we go to make this a final piece, is I'm actually going to push this edge. I'm going to grab this whole edge. I'm going to slide it over because I'm only looking for a partial alignment. And since this thing is going to swing around, like I said, like a door hinge from these 2 points, I want to make sure that this guy's a little bit more on the sloppy side, because you're going to use a binder or a glue, an epoxy or something like that, to sort of close them up and tighten them and make them all work together. So it's really just sort of figuring out what the best result is. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this guy on. This is the body. I'm going to turn these other layers off because I don't really want to see them. And then I want to see how this space is going to interact. And this is just one of those things where I can't see it. So you can see I've got a problem area here with the hair. That's not good. I've got a couple of good ways to fix it though. If we were molding and casting this, I'd want to bring this into alignment of draft, and I may still do that just to make it more stable. It just means pulling the geometry into the body to sort of make that blend off a little bit better. Again, I'm making minor corrections to Spicer's model. Again, nothing too ridiculous. I'm also noticing that this is interpenetrating the clasp. So again, I'm going to make that change. I'm going to make that change for him to clean it up. So those are kind of like my 3 things I got to pay attention to. So I'm going to go and I'm going to delete this part here. So we're going to delete the cuts I just made. We'll go back up and we'll grab the cape, and we don't have to mess with the keys. We'll leave these alone for now. So I want to push this guy back. In this case, I'm just going to use the move brush. Push that back so that reads like that. Smooth it off a tiny bit. Do the same thing in here. Again, I'm just looking to pull this into line of draft. Best way to really do this stuff is big brush, small movements. Nothing too heavy-handed. Just want to make sure that it penetrates the body through where the cut's going to be. Have that floating point. We create a wing of material. It's gonna hurt us later. And because I can do that, I can tuck this in just a tiny bit, and that's gonna make Spicer happy. Again, if you're engineering someone else's model, it's a combination of things that you're trying to prepare for. I've got a piece of filler material that's in here that's going to go in here. So right now I'm not worried about that. I'll worry about that later. For now, that's just going to fill up that space, so I don't have to draw this over. I'm just checking the underside. As for the hair's a tough tough thing to deal with. I think what I'm going to do is, since it's tucked in right here, I'm just going to go ahead and again use the move brush. I'm going to check my plane here and push that in. Hey, who's that? I didn't recognize you, man.
Yeah, I've gotten old. I've gotten so old, man. It's been a long time since.
You've got
I'm much older now.
You got some stuff on your face.
Yeah, I know, right? You mean this?
No, I'm talking about the mustache.
Yeah. I know. I'm just kidding. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm just streaming here a little bit on the on Spicer's Thor model. I'm going to close out in just a minute. I'm just trying to get the engineering done for the 3D print here. So.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Just fiddling around with it, trying to get some clearance on the cape. And yeah, you kind of surprised me. I wasn't sure who jumped. Because I'm streaming. I thought I didn't realize we were in the room that we were in. But yeah, no big deal.
Okay,
yeah,
I thought you were talking to Spicer.
No.
Okay.
I'm streaming. He's getting ready to stream. Right now, I'm just doing a quick. I'm just going through for a little bit. I'm going through the process of setting up this the cut up for the cape for his model.
Oh, okay.
And.
Nice. So do you leave any space when you boolean the keys? Do you leave any space on the female?
There's in this instance, these are straight cuts, so these planes are taking a very small amount of material out. So I guess the answer to that question is yes. But
yeah.
It really.
What about the insertion keys on the arms?
What are you talking about?
You see the female key that you booleaned out, right?
Right. What about it?
Yeah. Do you inflate the space on the female key, or do you just boolean and it fits?
The tool I use, the tool that I developed, this tool right here.
Mm-hmm.
There's space between the male and the female key. There has to.
Oh, okay.
So
once you boolean, it adds space.
Well, it removes material. It removes material so that there is a gap. You can't if you make it too tight. Now I can make adjustments to it depending on the size of the model. That if you make a
Yep.
part with no tolerance, that's what we refer to it as. It's not space,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
tolerance.
Exactly.
If you
Yeah.
make parts with no tolerance whatsoever, if
Mhm.
there's any error, the parts won't go together. They will bind.
Yeah.
And if they
Yeah.
bind, then you basically have to go in and shave
Yeah.
the keys down, and in some cases shave the keys completely off.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of people out there that buy models and buy kits, and if the kits are not, I don't want to say regulated, but if they're not built well, then they will bind, and then the artist that has purchased them will end up removing the keys.
So, how did you develop the key?
Rephrase the question. Because the key is, I think this is the 5th version of this particular key, and the question's like pretty, like, how do I put this? It's kind of like saying how did you make that pie? You know what I mean? And it's like,
okay, no, okay. So my question is, okay. So you told me that you've developed the key, right?
mhm.
So when you drag and boolean, it adds tolerance to the female key, right?
If
So-
I take the IMM brush and I put it, and then in this case
Yep.
we'll isolate the key. We'll isolate the tool.
Yep.
And of course my menu. I don't know why my menu keeps breaking. Split hidden. So the tool is made of 3 parts. It's made of the plane, the cut plane, the male and female keys. What are you asking me?
Because you told me that the way you developed the EMM brush
IMM
is once you boolean this key from a mesh, it adds tolerance, or do you add it manually?
Well, I usually leave it alone unless the part is really small. This has got a built-in tolerance. This has got a built-in tolerance to it. But
that's why I'm asking. How did you make the built-in tolerance?
Because there's a space between the parts.
Okay.
If I go ahead and move this guy.
See, that was my question. Okay, I understand. Okay.
If I move this guy over, there's tolerance all around. But if I need more, all I have to do is pull the male key away a little bit, and I can get more tolerance for smaller things.
Okay, so what you do then after you boolean, you delete that part.
I don't delete anything.
You don't?
No. I separate them into their individual components. Cut plane, female, and then male is additive. Male is additive, female and cut plane are subtractive.
Okay.
There are 3 different parts built into one tool.
Yep.
You can't do it if you try and do it all at once. You gotta. Well, I do it all at once, but this is a process. It's not a one size fits all. Not in this case, but it is a form of standardization. And there's 2 types of keys, and there's 2 types of alignment tools for 3D prints. For FDM, I use pins, and those are standardized, and as in they're always the same. For SLA, I use keys, and the keys are dependent on the size of the part. Because if you make a part that is, say, for instance, 1/6, and then you shrink it, let's say you go to 1/10, you're actually reducing the tolerance. So you're constantly building these things to size. You're not able to just build it once and then print it. And so you have to understand that, for instance, tolerances are dependent on all your tolerances are dependent on the math that you're using. So most of the time I give a tolerance of 1 millimeter. which means there's 1 millimeter on all sides, which means that the total tolerance is actually 2 millimeters.
Yeah.
So you're kind of dealing with that stuff on the regular. And if I make a small part, I use, let's say the small part is extra small, like a 30 millimeter character, which is usually known as 28 millimeter hero, which is very, very frustrating. The tolerance there is only 0.5 millimeter at best, and even then, you're pushing it, because you have, when a character is that small, you have to be able to work within that tolerance. And if you can't put a key in at that size because the tolerances are too tight, then you have to find another way of making the parts come together. So we don't generally use keys in this way. Sometimes we'll use a 1/3 of a sphere and a socket, so you can drop it into a little pocket type area.
Yeah.
That way your tolerances are a little bit more sloppy, but the part at that size will fit snugly. It's a really touchy thing, because like I said before, you weren't here for this, but like I was saying before, if you're using SLA and you're not, using light meters and checking your stuff, you can have overbake. If you have overbake at that size, your tolerance is going to get eaten up, in which case the parts aren't going to fit no matter what you do, short of, grinding away.
And you have shrinkage, and maybe.
So. Well, I don't like using the term shrinkage because it's not accurate. Overbake is kind of a swelling of the part, because you're overbaking the resin. You're adding more resin. Overbake can be formed by two things.
DLP,
too much.
And that's more for DLP. And SLA, you have shrinkage for sure.
No.
Yes, you do.
No, you don't, because SLA is, we're talking about light bake. So SLA uses light to cure resin. If you have too much light, you will overbake. Overbake swells the part, which reduces your tolerance. It's not shrinkage. Shrinkage is if a part is reduced in size. So if you make a mold out of, say, for instance, latex over time breaks down and it reduces in size. That's shrinkage. It's a very different thing. Overbake and light bleed are the two biggest problems of SLA. Light bleed is usually when your housing isn't fully enclosed properly, and light is spilling into the baking area, and that'll mess you up.
I mean, we have to disagree on that one, because
well, I've been doing this for close to 8 years, and this is what the terms are, and a lot of people get really confused about this stuff. People come up with all sorts of, misconceptions. The biggest one is, oh, hey, let's hollow our part because we're going to save material. Well, that's not why you hollow a part. You hollow a part because you're trying to reduce surface tension on the PTE membrane. So that the part doesn't get ripped off the build plate. And it always comes back to these things, because some of the community is, they make up reasons for doing things, and that's where we get into a lot of trouble when it comes to 3D printing. And it's very much got to use the right terms to describe the thing, and if you get guys talking, essentially bullshit. Like, because they're making things up, we get into a lot of trouble. And a lot of people really don't understand the things like, say, for instance, overbake and underbake, or, hey, I need to get a light meter to check, what wavelengths I'm putting out to bake this resin. Some of the other things that are really weird is if your resin goes bad, and that creates a scum or a film on your 3D print. That can be really horrible. And I've heard all sorts of wacky, silly things from people, and I'm just sort of like, that's not accurate, and that makes no sense. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But anyway, I'm done streaming for today, so I will catch